All right, Debbie and Colleen, if it's okay, I'll get started.
Sure.
I'm gonna put the both of you on mute just in case. And I'm also gonna be admitting people as they come in to the room while I'm talking. So I will be multitasking, but that's okay.
Uh,
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Anthony, and I am the program manager for the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our 2023 voter education series, Ballot Box Basics. For your awareness, this panel is being recorded. If you're uncomfortable with your face being in the recording, please feel free to turn your camera off. We will not be offended. A reminder for this evening that closed captioning is available in Zoom. To enable closed captions on your screen, you can click Live Transcript in the Zoom taskbar. If you need more assistance with closed captioning, I'm dropping a help document in the chat right now. And if you have any other accessibility needs throughout the course of the presentation, please feel free to just put that in the chat or send me an email. We begin our time together this evening with a land acknowledgement. Colonial Pennsylvania boundaries were first drawn in 1681 over original nation's land. We in Pennsylvania acknowledge the land ownership of original indigenous peoples, honoring the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the great nations of Pennsylvania, the Erie, Iroquois, Munsee Delaware, Shawnee, Ohio Valley, Susquehannock, and Lenape. We honor all original nations of the past and those among us today. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. Our state office oversees a grassroots network of 30 local leagues all across Pennsylvania. The League's mission is to encourage informed and active participation in government, work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. To learn more about our work and to subscribe to our action alerts, you can visit our website. I'll also drop the link in the chat as soon as I've finished our intro. I am very pleased to welcome you tonight to Ballot Box Basics, information every voter needs. We design these webinars because we know that voting, government, and elections can be complicated. In 2023, these monthly webinars have and will discuss important topics like registering to vote, why municipal elections matter, the role of school boards in the judiciary, and the Pennsylvania closed primary system. Whether you're a first-time voter or have voted in every election you were eligible for, we think you'll learn something new. You can watch previous recordings of Ballot Box Basics and sign up for future events on our website. I'll also put that link in the chat as soon as I'm finished. Throughout tonight's presentation, you are welcome and encouraged to ask questions using the chat function of Zoom or by raising your Zoom hand. You are also welcome to engage with fellow participants in the chat. We'll be answering questions throughout the presentation and as well as after the presentation during our Q&A time. In addition to recording, please note that I will also be sending a copy of the slides to all the registrants. I'll now turn it over to Colleen Coonley to introduce our presenter. Colleen?
I'm here.
Great.
Sorry about that. Thank you so
No
much.
worries.
We're so delighted. I think it's a really excellent program tonight. Thank you all for coming. I wanted to ask just a couple of quick sense questions to see who we have in the room. How many are members of the League of Women Voters? Just raise your hand. Don't do the Zoom hand. Okay. And then how many would say that they're from the Pittsburgh area? Okay. And then how many from, say, Lancaster area? And how many from northeastern Pennsylvania? I'm trying to look at the whole gallery here. Okay. And how about north central? All right. Okay. So the presenter this evening is Deborah Gross of Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, which is a distinguished organization, good government organization. Deborah, I know as a lawyer in the Philadelphia area. She's practiced law for 35 years all over. Highly regarded as a member of the Philadelphia Bar Association. She was my chancellor, so she was head of the whole Philadelphia Bar Association and made quite an impact and made great strides for legal service for low-income Pennsylvanians and establishing clinics to train lawyers to assist lawful permanent residents to become naturalized citizens. She's currently a member of the the Philadelphia Bar Association Board of Governors, and she has served as the president of the Bar Foundation. She received her JD from Boston University and a BS from Wharton and at University of Pennsylvania. So Debbie, thank you so much for being here tonight. Oh, and our daughters were Girl Scouts together. I had to throw that in there. So now I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Sam. Thanks to the League for reaching out to me. I actually was on a League of Philly event yesterday about municipal elections. So the League to me is an invaluable resource to our community. And I love working with them. So thank you for inviting me. I'm here to talk about judicial elections. In Pennsylvania, we elect judges. Other states don't elect judges. We hear a lot about our federal government. They're appointed for life, but we elect judges. So in Pennsylvania, I feel, and so does PMC, I'll say, it's important that you understand what positions we're electing our judges for. Why are the courts important? How do they impact our lives, and which courts are they? So I have a PowerPoint. I know you're from all over the state, so I'm going to be general, but I'm going to go through this PowerPoint on the courts in a relatively quick fashion. But I am always up for questions, so you can put them in the chat. You can interrupt me, but I feel as though it's important for you to understand, like, let's level the playing field and let's understand what positions are up for election. I mean, there's a lot on the ballot in November, and we're not only electing judges, but we also are faced with the question of what's called retention elections. So the question is, should we retain these judges? It's a yes or no question. There's no party listed. We call it nonpartisan, but you need to do a little homework. And so it can be overwhelming. I understand. But I would tell you not to vote for, not to decide on a judge based on how their name is, where they're on the list of the candidates, because they literally, as far as placement goes, they pull their name out of a hat to determine who gets put first in the ballot. So until Pennsylvania, I'll say, gets a little modern and can change the names on the ballot and maybe give a little more information. Right now, let's do some research, and it's really important to understand the court. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully this will work. Let's see. My screen is sharing, slideshow from the beginning. And so this is a program that we run at PMC. I guess a little blurb about PMC. Our goal is to educate people about the courts. We not only do community programming here, but we've now gone into schools, middle school, high school, colleges. We bring school students into the courts. It's just, in my mind, exceedingly important that people understand that the judiciary can have a very strong impact on their lives. And we see that, every day now with the coverage of the Supreme Court. So I'm going to skip this and talk and just go right to a little bit about the court system, okay? And then I don't want to take up too much time because I want to talk about electing judges, but I do feel that I'm going to, so if I talk too quickly, I guess, put up a hand, say, can you slow down? And I apologize for the rushing over things. But Pennsylvania's court system, first of all, we are the oldest court in the country. Our court is older than the United States courts. We've just celebrated our 300th anniversary. And the court system in Pennsylvania has this triangular structure. The highest court in Pennsylvania is our Pennsylvania Supreme Court. It makes the final determination of law about Pennsylvania law. It's known as our highest appellate court. Below that in the triangle, we have intermediate appellate courts. They're the Superior Courts and Commonwealth Court. And I'm going to explain a little later what they do and the positions that are available. Then beneath the Superior and Commonwealth Courts are courts of common pleas. They are what we use the terminology as entry-level courts. And below the courts of common pleas are also entry-level courts, but courts that are not of record, okay? And so in Philadelphia, it's municipal court. Outside of Philadelphia, they're known as magisterial district judges and magisterial district courts. Now, there is a municipal court in Pittsburgh, in downtown, in the Pittsburgh court, but the judges in the Pittsburgh municipal court are known as magisterial district judges. Pennsylvania is just one confusing state, even though we supposedly have, and I use the term supposedly, a uniform judicial system where the law is the same across the state, but it's not really it is the secret. Okay, so I did that for Berks County. So I'm going to talk a little bit, about magisterial district courts. Ignore the 23rd Judicial District because this presentation was for Berks County. I couldn't decide which presentation to do. So it is really interesting in Pennsylvania. And if you're outside of Philadelphia, okay, you will see on your ballot in all likelihood a candidate for a magisterial district judge position. It's an interesting situation. It is not a court of record. So when you go in front of the MDJs, there's no recording. If for some reason the MDJ decision you are not pleased with, you can appeal it to the Court of Common Pleas. Court of Common Pleas, which is the court above that, doesn't actually have to even take into consideration the decision by the magisterial district judge. Other thing that's interesting is, and I'm hoping it's the next slide. Nope. The magisterial district judge isn't necessarily a lawyer. So this is one of the few courts in our country where an MDJ doesn't have to be a lawyer. Now, they do have to pass a class. And I will give a disclaimer that I am on the Magisterial Judicial Education Board because I'm a lawyer. I used to practice mainly in federal court, practiced across the state. And when I actually realized that MDJs didn't have to be lawyers, I wanted to get involved and learn to find out how they learned, how they were educated. So I can tell you that they do take a 4-week class on what it takes to be an MDJ, what types of law you need to know, and they have to pass an exam. So it's not the same as 3 years in law school and passing the bar, but there is an exam they pass. And then if they would get elected, there is a new judge school that they have to go to, and then MDJs have a continuing judicial education component, which is greater than all the other continuing judicial education requirements for other judges. So it's a 40-hour requirement, whereas for all other judges in Pennsylvania, it's a 12-hour requirement. So they are kept current with the law, and it is a very good process. And that's all I will say at the moment. I'm not going to get into anything else beyond that. But, MDJs are typically where They will handle preliminary arraignments. They handle a lot of landlord-tenant matters, for example. They'll handle disorderly conduct. So these are very busy courts. Typically, the people who go into use these courts are not necessarily represented by lawyers, but you will see an MDJ in all likelihood on your ballot. They are elected for a 6-year term. MDJs do not have what's known as retention elections. It's not a yes or no, but they actually have to run every 6 years. Okay. It says Berks County. I'm going to ignore that again. But the next level up from and I forgot to talk about the municipal court. So in Philadelphia, because there are a few of you from Philadelphia, we do not have magisterial district courts. We have a municipal court. And in municipal court, all judges are lawyers. Rose from some scandals many years ago. And so, it's a municipal court. And in Philadelphia, the municipal court has taken over traffic court responsibilities because, again, there were some scandals many years ago. But municipal court in Philadelphia is, downtown. It handles preliminary arraignments. It handles disputes under $12,000, handles a lot of landlord-tenant disputes, handles some debt collection cases. And as an aside, Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts runs a program where we actually go into municipal court and observe preliminary arraignments and early bail review, and we publish reports on it. So if anybody wants to get involved in that, let me know, pmconline.org. Okay, but so those are the entry-level courts, right? And there will be individuals on the ballot for each of those courts, magisterial district courts and municipal courts. The next level court up is a court of common pleas. This court hears matters de novo. So what I said before is that even though a case may be decided by a magisterial district court or by a municipal court, and maybe you didn't like the decision, you're starting from scratch. You're starting anew. It's a whole fresh start. You can actually learn from your mistake, is what I say. Maybe you didn't have enough evidence. Maybe you didn't bring in a witness. You have a new opportunity to start the litigation. Depending again on where you're at, meaning which county, some judges in courts of common pleas are generalists, I will say, and some judges in courts of common pleas have specific focus. So in Philadelphia, because we have so many different we have a lot of judges, a lot of different focuses. So you have family court, and there are many court of common pleas judges in family court. You have criminal court, civil court, orphans court. Orphans court handles guardianship, handles wills. And so there are judges who specialize in these matters. Now, when you go into to vote for a judge in Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas, you are not voting for them to be a family court judge. You are not voting for them to be a criminal court judge or a civil matter judge. You're voting for them to be on the Court of Common Pleas. How it gets decided as to which court they end up or which type of court they end up in is the president judge of that court's responsibility. There are some individuals who run for Court of Common Pleas judge who maybe, for example, have been in family court as an arbitrator or as a mediator. And so they have that experience or expertise, and maybe they want to go into family court. And the president judge will know that and usually take that into consideration. Outside of Philadelphia, you don't always have all these different courts, so that the judges are generalists. I should say this, but Pittsburgh and Allegheny County do have specialties, I'll say. But outside of the two big cities, you don't always. So a judge running for election for the Court of Common Pleas might have to know, family law, orphans, guardianship, criminal law, and civil law. And their calendar may be such that, Monday is civil, Tuesday is criminal, Wednesday is family. But it depends on the county in which the court is located. Okay. So we'll skip that. And then this was all. Okay. So now we'll go quickly to the appellate courts. So the intermediate appellate courts are our superior court and commonwealth courts. So what this means is that if you have a matter that's in the court of common pleas, and you're not happy with the outcome. I mean, but the court of common pleas does have jury trials, right? And I forgot to mention this, in municipal court and magisterial district court, there are no jury trials. It is literally the judge making the decision. However, once you go into the court of common pleas, you do have jury trials as well. So our intermediate appellate courts are the superior court and commonwealth court. And while we use that terminology in Pennsylvania, there, of course, is an exception. And commonwealth court can also be, and I hate this legal jargon, but can also be a court of original jurisdiction, meaning a case could be filed first in Commonwealth court. For example, if it's against SEPTA, or it's brought by a township or a city, or against a township or a city or a county, it could be filed first in Commonwealth court and not in the court of common pleas. Our Commonwealth court, there is one position open, so there are two candidates, right, running for Commonwealth court. This court, while it's called an intermediate appellate court, still is really important. Like, I remember having a conversation with a reporter from Spotlight who wanted to cover the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And I said, please don't just cover the Supreme Court, please cover all the appellate courts, for two reasons. One, judges from the Commonwealth Court frequently run for higher positions, the Superior Court or the Supreme Court. So we don't want people to be elected to a court without us understanding who they are, because then they run for a higher position and they say, well, I've been a judge in this court, and we think that they've gotten the imprimatur of the voters, I'll say. The other reason is because this court could also have I'll say the final determination of matters in Pennsylvania. And what I mean by that is, for example, recently, our Commonwealth Court, and who's headed by President Judge Renee Cohn-Jubileer, issued I think it's like an over 700-page decision holding after a bench trial. So matters in the Commonwealth Court are bench trials. After holding a month-long trial, hearing all the evidence, held that the way Pennsylvania funds its education is unconstitutional. This is an amazing decision. It is precedential, meaning it really, it sets the bar, it sets precedent. It's telling the legislators and the governor that the way you are funding education in Pennsylvania is not up to snuff with our Constitution. And this decision was not appealed. So this judge's decision is the law of the land in Pennsylvania. So while it's known as an intermediate appellate court, it still is really an important appellate court and can make final decisions that impact each and every one of us. So that's one of the reasons I say, we need to understand every court in Pennsylvania, because they can have a serious impact on our lives. The other intermediate appellate court is our Superior Court. There are two positions open on our Superior Court. This court, I'll say, doesn't have the original jurisdiction similar to the Commonwealth Court, but it is one of the busiest courts in the nation, because any case can be appealed to the Superior Court. There's an automatic right of appeal, so therefore they may not write a decision on every case that is appealed to them. They may not have a hearing on every case that comes in front of them, but they are a busy court. There's no trial. It's just oral argument in front of these judges, or just papers, but it's a really important court. And it too can reach a decision that maybe isn't appealed or isn't accepted for appeal, I'll say, for a Supreme Court. And so that decision is the final law in Pennsylvania, or final interpretation of the law in Pennsylvania. So, it found a nursing home arbitration agreement unconscionable. That case was actually not accepted for appeal. So that was the law of the lands in Pennsylvania with respect to this one particular nursing home arbitration agreement. It's not a general statement, but again, there's two positions open. We'll discuss this later. There's only 15 judges on our Superior Court in Pennsylvania. There's more than that in this picture. I know that. What's important to know is that because we're the busiest because it's the busiest court in Pennsylvania, they actually have senior judges who assist when they're too busy. Senior judges, for example, there's a former Superior Court judge named Judge Susan Gantman. She is a remarkable woman. Was a remarkable judge. She just took senior status a year ago, but she helps out. Senior judges have certain limitations on how much time they can put in, but because their pension has kicked in, but they do help out. And then our final and highest court in Pennsylvania is our Supreme Court. There is one position open. We had a justice who was the president judge, Justice Baer, pass away in last October, actually, and so that spot is open. There are two candidates running for this spot. The court is the ultimate authority on matters concerning Pennsylvania law. For example, the court this term, actually today, I think is Wednesday, yes, has heard oral argument on gun control and whether it can Philadelphia can have its own laws or rules with respect to gun control, because of for whatever argument that they're going to make. So the Supreme Court is an exceedingly important court in Pennsylvania, and you definitely need to do your homework with respect to candidates. I am not going to tell you which candidate to vote for. I am a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, but I will tell you how to find out information. You also need to know that the Supreme Court's review is discretionary. So it can decide whether to take a case or not. It can decide whether that case is important to the constituents in Pennsylvania. I also believe, and this is my own personal opinion, not that of the court, that timing of cases is really important. So sometimes they may, in an election year, they may punt a case. They don't want to, there was a big issue many years ago. The Supreme Court ruled on voter redistricting. The legislature was not pleased with how the Supreme Court ruled. There were, and I know the League of Women Voters was involved in it. There was a constitutional amendment to try to change the way we elect our Pennsylvania Supreme Court judges. It did not pass. So fortunately, we have 5 years at least, but they've also tried to impeach a Supreme Court justice. So the Supreme Court is aware because that sometimes their decisions are not welcomed, I'll say, by the legislature. They maybe won't decide in an election year, but maybe push it and decide the opinion will come out in another year. But they will address issues that are of importance to Pennsylvanians. They also have in Pennsylvania, we have a unique power, and that's called the King's Bench power. And so a case could actually come first to the Supreme Court and not work its way up. It's a petition for the King's Bench power. They can decide to take it or pass it back send it back to where it should come. But we have that unique ability. So therefore, if it's a completely new matter where the court maybe hasn't ruled, somebody may decide, okay, I'm going to go before the Supreme Court and try this King's Bench power. There was a case that was that actually the the governor filed a petition for the Supreme Court to review with respect to the governor's authority in COVID. The Supreme Court decided it didn't want to handle that and did send it back to the Commonwealth Court. So there's a little give and take, I'll say, in that Supreme Court. This is our current Supreme Court. It's very exciting to me, I'll say, that our president judge is Deborah Todd. It is the first female Chief Justice of our Supreme Court ever. So that's 300 years. It's wonderful. She's a great person. She is compassionate. She is caring. She actually has a big focus on seniors. And each of these judges has their own, personal interests, which they have used or that they have focused on as the Supreme Court. Judge or Justice, our newest Supreme Court judge is Judge Brobson, who is the man on the far left when you're looking at this picture. He came from the Commonwealth Court. So that is why I say all these elections are important. And as I mentioned, these are just some cases about that the Supreme Court handles. But for example, they are doing a gun control case or just had oral argument today on the gun control case. So one last thing, and I'm going to stop with my discussion about the courts, but start going to elections, is they're not just hearing cases. They have a lot of other important, and I really mean it, important and impactful activities that they do. One is they regulate the practice of law, right? They if there's an attorney complaint, if there's attorney malfeasance, misconduct, they'll regulate that. They have a judicial conduct board. If there is a complaint against a judge, they investigate it. If there are hearings, they will actually make a determination as to whether that judge should be removed from the bench. The other, they budget for the court system. They have this administrative office called the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts. The current head of that office is leaving this month, and it'll be taken over by a woman. Again, first female who's heading up the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts. It's wonderful. I have to tell you, we have more women on our Superior Court, more women on our Commonwealth Court. It's to me, it's a wonderful thing. They handle budgeting of the court system, but they have to go hat in hand, I say, to the legislature for the money. So it is they don't get that. There was a time when they were punished for some decisions and their budget was restricted. That's a whole other topic for another day. And then they have committees, and the committees are also really important. And I say this because they seek public input. So they have committees concerning, the conduct, the rules for criminal cases, rules for civil cases, rules for family law cases, rules for minor courts, rules of evidence. And these are all, they want to hear from the public because they're going to modify, make new rules. We just had proposals for new rules concerning bail that are out there, so that this is really, they have an impact, right? Even though most bail cases don't make it up to the Supreme Court for a decision. There are some once in a while, but most don't. But they still oversee the rules concerning bail. So, even though they may not handle a case exactly on point, they have other ways that they can impact our lives. And we need to keep that in mind. Okay. We're not going to do the federal system. I guess before I go on to election of judges, since I've spoken so quickly, and does anybody have any questions? I didn't look in the chat. Right. Hold on, I'll look in the chat. Okay, we're good. Okay. If anybody has any questions about what I just rushed through, feel free to, ask, email me, put in the chat, whatever. And I'm going to now move on to election of judges. I'm going to give you a disclosure. PMC does not believe in the election of judges. Campaigning is troublesome. It means money's being raised. There's appearances there have been improprieties. There have been improprieties. But, we do elect judges. So since we elect judges, we should educate ourselves about the judges that we're electing. Judges are elected in odd number years. Again, only 20% of Pennsylvanians come out to vote in odd numbered years. That's a disgrace. We are having the minority make decisions for the majority. So if we're going to elect, let's get out and vote. And the other problem is that, the headliners, I'll say, the big ticket elections in odd number years are maybe the mayor, right? Maybe the district attorney. So that happens in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia. Lots of people come out for the primary and then they don't show up for the general. And that's not helpful. Okay. We need people to show up for the primary and the general elections because we elect judges and we don't want that to happen without our input, I will say. So I skipped over this, but I really want to just focus on it. The Supreme Court is elected for a 10-year term. Intermediate appellate courts, Court of Common Pleas are 10-year terms. They get, after that initial 10-year term, there is a retention vote. In the ballot in November, there are, I believe, 2 judges, a Superior Court and a Commonwealth Court judge who are up for retention election. It's a yes or no question, but you can find out information about those judges and the decisions that they've rendered simply by, I'll say, Googling their names or going into the pacourts.us website and asking for opinions that they've written or, that they've joined in on so that you can find out how they've ruled. But their 10-year terms, and then they have the retention elections. And there's no limit on how many retention elections a judge can run in or have, but except for our age limit. So judges in Pennsylvania have to retire at 75. As an aside, many of you may remember there was a constitutional amendment asking if we would agree to a retirement age of 75. It was a little misleading because we had a retirement age in Pennsylvania of 70. We were extending it to 75. That was not clear in the constitutional amendment at all, but it was done because there was a judge that was approaching retirement age, and it was specifically for that particular judge to extend their stay. And the voters did approve that constitutional amendment. So our judges are not, they retire at 75. The municipal court and magisterial district courts are 6-year terms. The magisterial district court is always elected. Municipal court, there is a retention election. Okay, so little bit quickly, who becomes a judge or justice? They have to be a member and this is not magisterial district court judges, but municipal court judges, Court of Common Pleas, appellate court, Supreme Court. They have to be a member of the bar. They have to be a district resident for 1 year. They have to win in a partisan primary. Then they have to be under 75 years. The bar associations, and I will go into this a little greater detail, provide a tremendous service by reviewing and recommending judges or candidates for judges. They have a requirement that somebody should be 10 years in practice. Now, it is not a requirement in Pennsylvania, but the bar associations do have that requirement. So, would I want somebody coming right out of law school to be a judge? I don't think so. There's a lot of experience and expertise that they gather along the way by practicing law and being a litigator. That's the other question. Like, there's not a limitation here as to what type of law they practice. So a judge, is in court. Should the candidate be somebody who is a litigator, has been to court? Should the candidate be somebody who has a focus on civil or criminal or general? These are all questions that the bar associations ask, but it's something that you should ask too when you look at somebody's background and make a decision as to whom to vote for. As I mentioned before, the magisterial district judge, they just have to be 18. There is not a college or even a high school graduation requirement. Note, they have to be a resident of Pennsylvania, and they have to live in their magisterial district for 1 year and pass the exam. Take the program and pass the exam issued by the Minor Judiciary Education Board. If they're an attorney in Pennsylvania, they don't have to take the exam issued by the Minor Judiciary Education Board. They do have to take, continuing education courses and take go to the judge school. And all new judges go to judge school. They may not go to judge school the first day they take the bench, but they do go to judge school. The Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts holds a judge school, and they do that. And it depends on the county and when they can honestly spare that judge is going to the school. We talked about retention elections. So I want to, and this is a lot of slides, so I'm not going to go through them all, but it's also important that we know about the rules governing judicial candidates and judges, because I've already been called about ads that are out there. One ad is bashing another candidate, and has that, but it's an independent ad. Is it an ad that's supported by a candidate? Is it an ad that's from the candidate? Is it an ad, and is it a truthful ad? So there's a lot of rules governing judicial candidates. And to me, the most important rule is that the judicial candidate can't answer a question on a topic that will be in front of that candidate, right, as a judge. So if the candidate, for example, is for the Supreme Court and is asked what they believe, what their opinion is of gun control and how they would rule, that candidate should not be answering that question, because the rules do not allow that. And so, I'm trying to find the rules. Hold on here. So they cannot, in connection with cases, controversies, or issues that are likely to come before the court, make pledges, promises, or commitments that are inconsistent with the impartial performance of the adjudicative duties of judicial office. So this is a concern, right? We want to elect judges that we think will, I'll say, vote a certain way maybe, but they shouldn't be making a proclamation or a determination out in public as to how they would rule if it's a matter that would come in front of them. So, we're sort of limited in the types of information that we can have about candidates to help us make that decision. So I often say to people, find out information about the candidate, what they do, right? Not only what types of law they've practiced, but also, what do they do in their spare time? How do they give back? You do want a judge who does community service, gives back to the community, does maybe some pro bono work. It's really important. That'll give you a flavor or a feel for that candidate. You can't even necessarily say, okay, this candidate has been a lawyer who represents, defense companies, so insurance defense work. So therefore, they're not going to be in support of somebody who's in an accident, for example. That's not necessarily true, because they're an attorney who works for a big firm, pays their salary. Maybe they had some, pretty big loans. So doesn't necessarily reflect that candidate's personal viewpoints or belief, according to law. I tell a story that I had a case against a defense firm. Individual is, well known, represented a big healthcare company. and it was a very contentious litigation. So therefore, one would think, okay, represents a healthcare company, works for a big firm, he'd be defense oriented, I'll say. He was appointed to the bench, so he wasn't elected, but he was appointed. He's a federal court judge. Turns out I was in front of him, and 3 decisions were issued in my favor about discovery. And I was like completely, taken off guard. I've later had some conversations, and he was like, well, I know what defense lawyers do to plaintiffs' lawyers. So you can't judge, I'll say, a book by its cover, but you need to dig in and find out more information and background about the candidate. The other important limitation that you need to know is that judges can't ask for money. If you have a judge that comes up to you and says, "Hi, I'm running for office. Will you financially support me?" That is not allowed. Now, they have a campaign committee, and that the head of their campaign committee can be standing right next to them. And after the judge leaves, that head of the campaign committee can ask you for money, but the judge cannot ask you for money. The judge cannot make speeches on behalf of political organizations. So there are a lot of limitations on judges. They can't attend dinners, events sponsored by political organizations and be asked to speak. They could. We were asked by a reporter, because there was one candidate for judge who was in a crowd for was part of a rally, and so first, was that person allowed to be at the rally? I said, did the person speak? Did the person stand up? So there's a lot of fine lines, but you need to do your homework. What other limitations just that are really important? They can't participate in political activities, which is really difficult when they're running as an R or a D, right? We have partisan politics. They're running as a partisan for a judicial position, but they can't be participating in political activities. So when they campaign, they're supposed to act in a manner consistent with the independence, integrity, and the impartiality of the judiciary. So interesting, there was a campaign ad 2 years ago that was endorsed by a candidate for the Supreme Court, but not published by that candidate's campaign committee. And it pretty much crossed the line, I'll say. And it was a little misleading. This candidate had been rated by the Bar Association as recommended, and so the Bar Association asked that candidate to pull back the ad. Now, the ad was not issued by the candidate; it was issued by a independent, dark money organization, but the candidate was able to get that ad pulled back. So I'm going to talk a little bit, hoping it's on the slide, about how to evaluate judicial candidates, because I really think it's hard. It's not easy. You have to do homework, but find out about their legal experience. Like, did they actually practice law? What have they done since they had their law degree? Did they pass the bar? Make sure they've passed the bar. You can check on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court website if that individual was disciplined at all. We don't want any candidates for judges who have some kind of disciplinary record. What's their reputation for integrity and fairness? What's their community involvement, public service, ongoing educational and professional activities? Do they go out to the community and talk on matters? Do they have compassion? Are they committed to equal justice? So, these are important qualities to help you evaluate a judicial candidate. Now, that's a lot of individual work that you need, that we're asking you to do, and it's not easy. So the bar associations provide a tremendous service. The Pennsylvania Bar Association makes a determination about recommending candidates for the appellate courts. If there is a candidate for the appellate court based in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Bar Association makes a recommendation. If there's a candidate for Supreme Appellate Court based in Allegheny County, the Allegheny County Bar Association makes a recommendation. As far as courts of common pleas judges and municipal court judges, the Philadelphia Bar Association does an investigation. Other counties do things differently, so you need other county bar associations. So you need to go to your county bar association website to find out, what they do and how they do. But what I'm going to give is an explanation. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, and just talk a little bit about the investigation that the Philadelphia Bar Association does, because I know it. I served on that commission. It's really to me pretty remarkable. So the Bar Association has a commission that's made up of 35 individuals, not all lawyers. Some are non-lawyers. I know we have a school teacher. We had somebody involved in a nonprofit. Then the other members of this commission are a wide, diverse range of lawyers. So we have the president judge of the municipal court, president judge of the court of common pleas. We have a representative from the district attorney, a representative from the public defender, a representative from the U.S. attorney, a representative from the U.S. public defender. Then we have like a plaintiff's lawyer, a defense lawyer, a family court lawyer. So we make sure that it's a well-rounded, balanced committee. We have somebody from the Hispanic Bar Association, somebody from the barristers, somebody from the Asian Pacific Law Association. So it is really important that the diversity be considered. So this commission will make the final determination as to whether to recommend, not recommend, or highly recommend a candidate. How they do that is there is an investigative team that's put together by the Bar Association. It's 5 people, one of whom is not a lawyer. And they investigate the candidate. The candidate fills out a questionnaire. This investigative team has to find 20 references, not from the candidate, but 20 independent references to interview. And there's a list of questions that we have to ask about the candidate, about their performance. We have to ask judges before whom the candidate has appeared. We have to ask opposing parties. We have to see if we can track down clients to make sure that, this attorney hasn't, run out with the money or treated a client's case improperly. And so then this group of 5 also interviews the candidate and then makes a decision as to whether to recommend or not recommend the candidate. This commission makes a presentation to the Bar Association Committee, and then the Bar Association Committee makes a recommendation. So it is a very thorough, time-consuming process that does work. And so I would just recommend that people, rely on it or do your own homework, but it's just not an easy situation. So I have talked a lot. I want to leave some time for Q&A. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Deborah. This has been wonderful. Every time I had a question, it got answered as I was typing it. So, but I love these. I always learn something new.
I mean, Sam, your answer to your question about the magisterial court qualifications, it's really history. So the magisterial district courts were people's court. And so it was to resolve really, for example, matters between neighbors. And it was sort of, you didn't have to be a lawyer. They're very old, but I have my own opinion, but I don't want to say it. But, there are so I will tell you, there's some MDJs who I have worked with who are not lawyers, who are absolutely wonderful. I mean, really terrific. And they've been an MDJ for a while, and they really are compassionate, and they will hear both sides, and they want to resolve the matter. I'll leave it at that.
I won't ask my follow-up question then. Right. I don't want to put you on the spot. Well, does anybody else have any questions? I know I'll be sending out Deborah's contact information as well. And the PMC website has tons and tons of information too. So I, don't want to put anybody on the spot, but thank you so much for your time, Deborah, and for, reinforcing the importance of making an informed choice at the polls and doing your research, even though it is hard research to do sometimes. It's really important.
It's really important. And the Philly Bar has actually an app you can download, so you know.
Oh, great.
Okay.
I'm now going to turn it over to Colleen Coonley, our Voter Services Director, to close us out.
Thank you, Deborah. Sam, thank everybody for coming. I hope you're seeing our Vote 411
Yes, we are.
website. So that's one place to find information about judges. And I just recommend Vote 411. I've done election protection work for years and years before I was ever involved with the league. And so I was doing big legal questions. But anytime an individual had a question, we sent them to Vote 411 and all their questions were answered. Where to vote. The information was in Spanish and English. Who is running, who are my candidates this year, this election? So I just commend Vote 411 to everyone and anyone. I wanted to, let's see, we talk just quickly, a couple quick announcements. Our next ballot box basics is on October 10th. It's on municipal government. If you go to our website, you'll see all these events and how you can register for them. There's an upcoming Bucks County League webinar on book banning and what voters can do. Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts is holding an appellate court candidate forum, and we're partnered with them. That's a place where you can see and hear the candidates, and that's on October 24th. I know we have a registration link on our website. I know there's one on Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts website, of course. And just something very topical. Yesterday, Pennsylvania became, I think, 24th state to have automatic voter registration for all eligible PA residents who are obtaining or renewing their driver's license. Of course, you can opt out. You don't have to be registered to vote, but instead of it being a thing that we'll have to scramble on, people are registered unless they opt out. So keep up the good work, all of you, and thank you so much. I know it's late, it's dinner time. Thank you. It was a great program. And we're going to post the video of it on our website. So if you see it again, or you missed some of it, or you want to share it, please look at our website. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colleen.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.